First contact and discovery. The signal pulsed through the darkness of space, weak and fading, but unmistakably artificial. Deep in the monitoring chamber of Earth's Callisto Observatory, Lieutenant Maya Sharma sat alone, her eyes growing heavy after 16 hours of watching data streams flow across her screens. The graveyard shift was punishment for her latest disagreement with the station commander about resource allocation. As she reached for her fourth cup of synthetic coffee, something flickered on her monitor, a pattern repeating precisely every 183 seconds. "That's not random," she whispered, suddenly alert. Maya adjusted her settings, isolating and amplifying the signal. She ran it through the analysis program, and the computer confirmed her suspicion. This was a message, not just cosmic background noise. Her heart raced as she pressed the emergency communication button. "Captain Chen, I found something you need to see immediately." 10 minutes later, Captain Eliza Chen strode through the door, her usual commanding presence somewhat diminished by the sleep still evident in her eyes. At 42, Chen had earned her reputation as one of Earth United's most accomplished deep space explorers, with a special talent for first contact scenarios. "This better be important, Lieutenant," she said, but her irritation vanished as Maya displayed the signal pattern. "Look at these mathematical sequences." Maya pointed to sections of data. "They're too precise to be natural. And here, these repeated patterns suggest language, not random emissions." Captain Chen leaned closer, her exhaustion forgotten. "Origin: the Epsilon Eridani system, about 10.5 light-years away. It's coming from the fourth planet." Chen was quiet for a moment. Humanity had established colonies on Mars and Venus, with small outposts on Europa and Titan, but they had only sent unmanned probes to the nearest star systems. No human had traveled that far. "Have other species responded?" Chen finally asked. Maya shook her head. "That's the strange part. The message contains fragments suggesting they've been broadcasting for over 60 years. Several advanced civilizations must have received it before us." "But no one answered." Chen finished the thought. "Exactly. Run a deeper analysis. I want to know everything you can extract from this signal before we take it to command." For the next 48 hours, Maya worked with the observatory's linguists and xenobiologists to decipher the alien transmission. When they finally presented their findings to Earth United Command, the room fell silent. "The message is from a species calling themselves the Vordak," Maya explained, standing before the assembled officers and scientists. "Their world is dying. Their atmosphere is breaking down due to a cascading chemical reaction triggered by a solar flare event decades ago. They've been asking for help for generations, but every advanced civilization that received their plea has ignored them." Admiral Kazuo Tanaka's face darkened. "Why would advanced species ignore an extinction-level event?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead xenobiologist, stepped forward. "Based on what we've decoded, it appears the rescue was deemed economically impractical by at least 3 different civilizations. The Vordak have unusual biological requirements. Saving them would require significant technological adaptation." Captain Chen, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "How long do they have?" "Our calculations suggest less than 2 Earth years before their atmosphere becomes completely toxic," Maya replied. The room erupted in debate. Military advisors argued against intervention. The mission would be dangerous, the technology untested, the outcome uncertain. Financial officers calculated the enormous cost of a rescue operation across such distances. Politicians worried about the diplomatic implications of helping a species that other, more advanced civilizations had abandoned. Captain Chen listened to it all before stepping to the center of the room. "Throughout human history, we've faced extinction multiple times," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Climate crisis, nuclear threats, pandemics. Each time, we survived not because it was easy or economical, but because enough of us refused to give up. We came together as a species to save ourselves." She paused, looking at each person around the table. Now we have the opportunity to do for another species what we've done for ourselves. If we turn our backs now, what does that say about humanity? The debate continued for hours. Finally, Admiral Tanaka gave his decision. The Horizon will investigate, he said, naming Earth's newest and fastest exploratory vessel. Captain Chen will command the mission. If she confirms the situation, we'll decide on next steps. 3 months later, the Horizon emerged from its final jump near Epsilon Eridani. The crew had trained intensively for first contact, but nothing could have prepared them for the sight that greeted them. The fourth planet had once been beautiful. Scans revealed it had once featured vast pink oceans and sprawling purple forests. Now, angry red clouds swirled across its surface. The oceans had darkened to a murky brown, and the forest regions had shrunk to small patches. Life signs? Captain Chen asked, standing on the bridge with her hands clasped behind her back. Concentrated in the northern hemisphere, replied Science Officer Damon Riley. Population readings suggest approximately 12 million individuals. Historical data from their transmissions indicated they once numbered in the billions. Sir, called Navigation Officer Priya Naidu, I'm detecting energy signatures of previous visitors. At least 7 different advanced species have been here in the past 6 decades. They came, they saw, they left. Dr. Zhang, the expedition's chief medical officer, said bitterly. Captain Chen's face remained impassive, but her voice was steel when she spoke. Prepare the landing craft. I want a team on the surface within 2 hours. The descent through the turbulent atmosphere was rough, the ship bucking against storms of acidic rain. When they finally touched down on a platform extending from one of the remaining Vordak cities, First Officer Marco Alvarez was the first to step outside in his environmental suit. The air was thin, with twice Earth's nitrogen content and chemicals that turned their sensors red with warnings. Through the hazy atmosphere, they could see the twisted metal and crystal structures of the city, once beautiful, now corroding and crumbling. A group of tall, slender beings approached them. Their bodies were covered in a fine, feathery substance that shimmered with iridescent blues and greens. They moved with a peculiar undulating motion, and their 4 upper limbs gestured in complex patterns. Their facial features were concentrated around large, luminous eyes with double pupils. One stepped forward, wearing an elaborate headdress that seemed to contain some kind of technology. I am Zelith, voice of the Vordak remnant, the creature said, its melodious voice translated through the hastily constructed language matrix Maya had built. You are humans, from the young world. Captain Chen stepped forward and bowed slightly. I am Captain Eliza Chen of the Earth United Space Initiative. We received your distress signal. Zelith's eyes blinked in an unusual pattern, their inner membranes closing sideways. The translator couldn't capture the emotion in their voice, but the meaning was clear. You came. After generations of calling into the void, someone finally came. Zelith led them to a domed building where maps and charts displayed the rapid decline of their world. What had once been a thriving ecosystem of unique life forms was now poisoned by a chain reaction of atmospheric chemicals. It began with the Great Solar Storm, Zelith explained, manipulating a holographic display. It triggered a reaction in our upper atmosphere. The protective layers began to break down. The chemically active compounds in our atmosphere began to bond in new ways, creating toxins. Our bodies cannot adapt quickly enough. The other species who came, why didn't they help? Dr. Zhang asked. The Meridian Confederacy was first, Zelith said. They studied our biology and declared our rescue economically non-viable. They said the resources required to save us would consume the equivalent of 17 years of their economic output. The alien paused, a tremor passing through their feathery covering. The Krell Empire offered to preserve genetic samples of our species for their archives. The Volturi suggested we focus on digital consciousness transfer. None offered actual rescue. Captain Chen watched as Vordak children played in a protected garden area. Their movements were sluggish, their feathery coverings duller than the adults. They were already suffering. Our physiology requires specific atmospheric conditions, Zeleth continued. We breathe through specialized membranes that cover our bodies. These membranes also help regulate our temperature and electrical systems. Once damaged by toxins, they cannot be repaired. Dr. Zhang studied the medical data with growing concern. Your biology is unlike anything we've encountered. Your cellular structure interacts with your atmosphere in ways that are fundamentally different from Earth life. That is why the others deemed us too difficult to save, Zeleth agreed. Our entire evolutionary path diverged from most known sentient species. We cannot simply be placed in standard life support. Captain Chen moved to the window, watching the acid rain eat away at the protective dome covering the city. How many cities remain? She asked. 7, Zeleth replied. We once had thousands. Now we concentrate our remaining population to conserve resources and maintain atmospheric scrubbers. But the degradation accelerates. The children you see, they are the last generation. Even if they survive to adulthood, they will be sterile. The captain turned to face the alien leader. You said the others claimed it was impossible to save you, she said firmly. Then we'll have to do the impossible. Zeleth's eyes widened, the double pupils dilating. You would attempt what no other species would. Humans have a long history of doing what seems impossible, Dr. Zhang said, especially when lives are at stake. Captain Chen nodded. We'll need to understand everything about your biology, your atmosphere, your requirements for survival. We'll need to work together. Our resources are limited, First Officer Alvarez warned quietly. A full evacuation would require more ships, more technology than we have. Then we'll call for help, Chen replied. I don't believe Earth will let these people die. As the human team worked through the night, analyzing data and developing preliminary plans, Zeleth watched them with growing hope. For the first time in generations, the Vordak allowed themselves to believe they might have a future. Outside, the storms intensified, eating away at the protective domes of the city. The clock was ticking. But now, at least they were no longer facing extinction alone. Impossible rescue. Dr. Aisha Okafor hadn't slept in 3 days. The laboratory at Earth's Unified Science Center in Lagos was littered with failed prototypes and simulation reports. When Captain Chen's transmission had reached Earth explaining the Vordak situation, global leaders had acted with unprecedented unity. This wasn't just a scientific challenge. It was a test of humanity's place in the cosmos. We're missing something fundamental, Aisha muttered, pushing away another failed atmospheric simulation. The holographic display showed the Vordak tissue sample deteriorating rapidly in what should have been a stable environment. This was the 27th failure in 10 days. Dr. Sanjay Patel, the team's xenobiologist, walked over to examine the results. Their membrane physiology is unlike anything in our evolutionary tree, he said. It's not just that they breathe through their skin. Their entire cellular structure has co-evolved with their planet's specific atmospheric composition, which is now poisoning them, Aisha finished. Every environment we create works for a few hours, then breaks down. She pulled up a 3-dimensional rendering of Vordak's cellular structure, enhancing the image to show how their membranes interacted with atmospheric particles. Look at how their cells process the nitrogen compounds. It's almost as if the atmosphere isn't just something they live in, it's part of them. Dr. Patel froze, staring at the display. What if that's exactly it? What if we're approaching this all wrong? Meaning? We've been trying to create an environment for them, like we would for humans, a ship with the right atmosphere inside. But what if instead of putting them in an environment, we need to make the environment part of them? 3 sleepless nights later, Dr. Okafor unveiled her new design to the global science team. The bioatmospheric matrix looked unlike any life support system ever built. Instead of a traditional sealed environment, it was an intricate network of specialized materials that flowed around and through the body, creating a personal atmosphere. The key was understanding that for the Vordak, their atmosphere isn't separate from their bodies, she explained to the assembled scientists. This system doesn't just surround them with the right gases, it becomes part of their biological processes during transit. The test results were promising. Simulated Vordak tissue survived not just hours, but weeks. News of the breakthrough spread quickly. Resources from across Earth were redirected. Manufacturing centers that once produced luxury goods now created components for bioatmospheric matrices. Shipyards worked around the clock to construct a rescue fleet. On the Vordak homeworld, Captain Chen and her team fought a different battle time. The protective domes were failing faster than predicted. The acid storms had broken through in 3 locations, causing hundreds of casualties. "We need at least 4 more months," Chen told Zelith during their daily strategy meeting. "The technology is being developed, but constructing enough ships to evacuate your people will take time." "We may not have 4 months," Zelith replied, their voice weaker than when the humans had first arrived. The atmospheric toxins were taking their toll even on the adult Vordak. "The eastern dome collapsed yesterday. We lost over 1,000. Chen's face was grim. "We've established the temporary barriers, but they won't hold against the stronger storms." First Officer Alvarez entered the command center, his expression tight with controlled urgency. "Captain, we've detected a massive storm front moving in from the southern hemisphere. Acid concentration is 30% higher than anything we've seen. Impact in approximately 48 hours. Casualties?" Chen asked. "If it hits at current strength, the southern and central domes will fail. We're looking at potential losses of up to 6 million. The room fell silent. All their work, all their planning. It might all be too late. "There must be something we can do," Dr. Zhang said. "Some way to reinforce the domes, or divert the storm." Zelith moved to the atmospheric monitoring station. "Our ancestors once had technology to seed the upper atmosphere with neutralizing compounds. We abandoned such methods generations ago when they proved to cause long-term damage. But in this case, long-term consequences aren't the priority," Chen said. "If that storm hits, there won't be a long-term for millions of your people. Our remaining atmospheric vessels are not powerful enough to deliver the necessary compounds," Zelith said. Captain Chen turned to her engineering chief. "Lieutenant Kim, could the Horizon's shuttles be modified to deliver these compounds?" Lieutenant Su-Jin Kim considered for a moment. "It's possible, Captain. But we'd need to retrofit them with specialized dispersal systems, and they'd have to fly directly into the storm. The acid concentration would cause significant damage." "How many pilots would we need?" "At least 6 to cover enough area to make a difference." Chen nodded. "I'll pilot the lead shuttle myself. Ask for volunteers for the others." "Captain," Alvarez objected, "regulations clearly state." "I'm well aware of the regulations, First Officer," Chen cut him off. "But I'm not asking anyone to take a risk I'm not willing to take myself." 20 hours later, 6 shuttlecraft rose into the toxic atmosphere of the Vordak world. The storm front loomed on the horizon, a churning wall of red-tinged clouds that stretched from the ground to the upper atmosphere. "Remember, maintain formation and keep to your assigned quadrants," Chen instructed from the lead shuttle. "We need even distribution of the neutralizing compounds." The shuttles accelerated toward the storm, their hulls already beginning to corrode from the atmospheric acids. Inside her craft, Chen could hear the warning sensors as the external temperature rose and the acid concentration increased. "Entering the outer boundary," she reported. "Initiating dispersal." The shuttle's modified systems released thick clouds of chemicals designed to neutralize the most toxic compounds in the approaching storm. The effect was almost immediate. Where the chemicals met the storm front, the angry red clouds began to lighten, turning a more benign orange. But the storm was massive, and their supplies limited. For 3 hours, the shuttles flew back and forth through the storm front, each pass causing more damage to their vessels. Warning lights flashed across Chen's console as systems began to fail. "Captain, my engine stabilizers are failing," came Lieutenant Park's voice over the comm. "I'm losing altitude control." "Return to base, Lieutenant," Chen ordered. All shuttles, report status. 4 of the 6 shuttles had critical system failures. Only Chen's and Lieutenant Kim's remained somewhat operational. We haven't covered enough area, Kim reported. The storm is still at lethal concentration in sectors 7 through 12. Chen studied the atmospheric readings. The storm had weakened, but not enough to prevent catastrophic damage to the domes. Lieutenant, return to base with the others. I'm going to make one more pass. Captain, your shuttle can't take another pass. The structural integrity is already compromised. That's an order, Lieutenant. Chen turned her shuttle toward the heart of the storm, where the acid concentration was highest. The neutralizing compounds were nearly depleted, but she had one option left, a desperate one. She programmed a new course, then opened a channel to the horizon. First Officer Alvarez, I'm sending you command codes for the shuttle's reactor. On my mark, initiate emergency overload. There was a pause before Alvarez's shocked voice came through. Captain, that would. I'm aware of the consequences, Marco. But the energy release will catalyze the remaining neutralizing compounds and disperse them through the heart of the storm. It's our only option. Chen guided her failing shuttle deep into the storm. Systems were shutting down around her as the acid ate through critical components. She activated the emergency transponder. Approaching optimal position. Stand by for reactor overload. Captain. Alvarez's voice was tight. There must be another way. There isn't time. The storm will hit the central dome in less than an hour. Chen took a deep breath. It's been an honor serving with you all. Initiate reactor overload on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. Chen closed her eyes as the shuttle's reactor began its catastrophic cascade. The energy built rapidly, superheating the remaining neutralizing compounds. The explosion lit up the dark storm clouds like a miniature sun. The shockwaves spread outward, carrying the catalyzed compounds throughout the storm system. Where they touched, the toxic clouds dissipated, their deadly chemistry transformed. On the ground, the Vordak watched in awe as the approaching death cloud began to break apart, fading from blood red to orange to a pale yellow before dissipating entirely. In the command center, Alvarez stared at the monitor showing Captain Chen's transponder signal, now gone. She knew, he said quietly. She knew from the beginning that someone would have to make that sacrifice. Dr. Zhang placed a hand on his shoulder. She made her choice. Now we have to make sure it wasn't in vain. 3 days later, the first ships from Earth arrived. 15 vessels specifically designed to transport the Vordak safely. Dr. Okafor herself led the science team, bringing thousands of the bioatmospheric matrices. The matrices will sustain each individual during the journey, she explained to Zelith as they prepared for the evacuation. Once we reach the habitat we've prepared, you'll be able to gradually adapt to a more traditional protective environment. You've created an entirely new technology for us, Zelith said, touching one of the matrices with reverence. No other species would invest such resources for strangers. Dr. Okafor smiled sadly. Captain Chen believed your lives were worth saving. We're just following through on her vision. The evacuation took weeks. Each Vordak was carefully fitted with a personal bioatmospheric matrix that maintained their unique biological needs. The children were evacuated first, then the elderly and infirm. As the protective domes continued to fail, the pace accelerated. On the final day, Zelith stood with Alvarez, now acting captain, at the entrance to the last shuttle. Behind them, the once great city was being consumed by acidic fog. For generations, we thought we would die here, Zelith said, looking back at their dying world. Every advanced species told us our rescue was impossible, that we were not worth saving. They were wrong, Alvarez replied. Why did you help us when nobody else would? Your technology was less advanced, your resources more limited. Alvarez considered the question. Throughout our history, humans have faced extinction many times, from natural disasters, from our own weapons, from our damage to our environment. Each time, We survived because we refused to accept that there was no solution. Perhaps that's what makes us different. We don't easily accept the impossible. Zelith's feathery covering rippled, and what the humans had learned was an expression of deep emotion. Captain Chen gave her life for people she had only just met. She believed that the measure of a civilization isn't its technology or its wealth, but its compassion, Alvarez said. And she believed that what happens to one species matters to all of us. As their shuttle lifted off, leaving the dying planet behind, Zelith watched through the viewport. We will tell our children of Earth, and of humans who came when no one else would. We will tell them of Captain Chen. Her name will be remembered as long as the Vordak exist. 6 months later, the new Vordak settlement on a terraformed section of Europa was thriving. The bioatmospheric technology had been refined, allowing the creation of controlled environments where the aliens could live without their personal matrices for limited periods. In the central gathering place stood a monument, a human figure with arms outstretched toward the stars, made from metals salvaged from Captain Chen's destroyed shuttle. At its base, inscribed in both human and Vordak languages, were the words, "The measure of a civilization is not its power, but its compassion." As Dr. Okafor stood looking at the monument, Zelith approached. The Vordak's feathery covering had regained much of its iridescent luster. "Our children are growing stronger," Zelith said. "The latest tests show no signs of sterility. Our species will continue." "I'm glad," Okafor replied. "Eliza would be proud. The other species who abandoned us are concerned," Zelith added. "They have sent delegations, asking about our alliance with humans. I believe they fear you." "Fear us? We're centuries behind their technology. But you did what they claimed was impossible. You valued life above profit, compassion above convenience. Perhaps that is what truly frightens them, not what humans can do, but what you choose to do." As twilight fell over the settlement, the stars began to appear in Europa's sky. Among them was the sun of the Vordak's original home, now just a distant point of light. "We are teaching our children that stars are not just navigational markers or fusion reactions," Zelith said. "We teach them that stars represent possibility, that somewhere in the light of those distant suns, there might be others like humans, who will come when called, who will help when asked, who will do the impossible simply because it is right." Dr. Okafor smiled. "Perhaps that's what will define humanity's place in the galaxy, not our technology or our power, but our stubborn refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible when lives are at stake." Together, human and alien stood in silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky, each a beacon of possibility in the vast cosmos they now faced together.